Good morning, everyone. A good Erev Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh Iyar is tomorrow and Shabbos. Haba Leila Latova. What a month this has been. Month of Nisan. So exciting. Very good. Okay, today we're going to learn the 10th Perek. Today's shiur is Lili Nishmas, Our Nachman and Simcha Koyin, Rishon Mercha Mishchepsel, Bracha Sar, Shmuel Levin, Binam Moshe Ben Yosef, Be'ed and Hashem will have an aliyah. And Rishon Shlema, Yisov and Rachel Leah, Rachel Bas Pesel Zelda, Avram Yitzchak Ben Risha, Chai Bas the Bela, Rishon Shlema, Sel Shech Yisrael. And a special shout out to our good friends at the Imperial Advisory Group for sponsoring Seder Nashim. If you need help with your CFO stuff, for your business, please reach out to them directly at imperialgrp.com. Okay, here we go. Mishnah Perek Yud Mishnah Aleph. Dealing with a guy who was married to more than one wife. Misha Hayed Naso Ishtei Nashim V'mei. Suppose someone was married to two wives and died without leaving enough money to pay for both of the kesubas. Harishona Kodemas L'Shniya, and the wife who was married first collects her kesuba before the one who was married second. The second one takes only property that remains after that. So she gets the first one gets paid first, and the second one gets paid second. The Yarshi Harishona Kodim the Yarshi Shniya. And if both wives die, and the Yarshim collect their kesubas, and the Yarshim of the first wife come before the Yarshim of the second wife. Next case. Nasa is Harishana V'Mesa. If he married the first wife and she died, so that he inherited her. Nasa Shniya V'Mesu. And then he married a second wife, and then he died. So this and then the sons of the first wife want to collect the kesuba of the male children. While the second wife wants to collect her regular kesuba, but there's not enough property for both. And the lecha is shniya v'yarsheh kodem the yarshi harishona. The second wife or her yarshim who are collecting an actual kesuba, they come before the heirs of the first wife who seek the kesuba of their male children. I mean the Yerusha. Mishnah Beis. If someone was married to two wives, one of whom had a larger kesuba than the other, and they died, when the wives died, and afterward he died, so now he died after the wives, and the orphans of the wife, the larger kesuba, want to take their mother's kesuba. But there's only enough property there to pay for the two wives' kesubas, and if those are paid, then no property will be left to divide evenly among the sons. Chalk and B'Shavet, they divide all the property equally, and they do not take their mother's kesubas. Because the kesuba of the male children is not collected if none of the inherited property will be divided in the usual way as a result. The kesuba of the male children is a din derabanan, and the Rabbanan did not want the decree to be followed in if the result would be that none of the property would be inherited in the manner prescribed by Torah law. It doesn't supersede Torah law. However, if there was enough property there that at least a dinar would be left over after the kesubas are paid, these sons take their mother's kesuba, and those sons take their mother's kesuba, and then they divide the remaining dinar evenly. Since there is a dinar left to divide evenly in accordance with Torah law, the rabbanan of the kesuba of the male children applies. But if the value of the remaining property would be less than a dinar, they must divide the entire estate equally, and that's the end of that. But if there was not enough property to pay both the kesubos and still be left with a dinar, and the orphans of the wife with the larger kesubos said, we are willing to consider our father's property that we receive as worth a dinar more than its actual value. Today, in order that there will be a dinar left over and they can take their mother's kesuba. Ein shaman lehem, we do not listen to them. Ela shaman as an nechasim bebastin. Rather, we evaluate the property in court to determine its actual value at the time of their father's death. And if, according to the court's assessment, there will not be a dinar left after both kesubas are paid. Again, if, according to the court's assessment, there will not be a dinar left after both kesubas are paid, then all the Yorshim divide the entire property equally. Mishnah Gimel, how you sham nechasim kiro Roy, if there were properties that were expected to become their father's, meaning that he was owed money but was not paid before he died, they are not considered to be in his possession and are not counted toward the extra dinar. Rabbi Shimon says, even if there is property in the estate worth the additional dinar, but it consists of movable items, ain't no clue, it does not count as anything, and they cannot take their mother's kesubas. I see you sham nechasim sheyesh lehen achrayas yoser al shtei kesubas dinar. Unless there are real properties worth a dinar more than the two kesubas, meaning that both the amount of the two kesubas and the dinar must be made up of real properties, because the kesuba of the male children is one of the conditions of the kesuba and therefore shares its law. Just like the actual kesuba is collected only from real properties, so too is the kesuba of the male children. Mishnah Dalet, Misha Haya Naso Shalosh Nashivamei, someone was married to 3 wives and died, and each one claims a different amount. Kesuba Shalzu Mana, Shalzu Masan, Shalosh Mas. This one's kesuba is 100 Jews, and this one's kesuba is 200 Jews, and this one's is 300 Jews. Sham Elaman, and there's only 100 Jews worth of property from which they can collect. They divide the property equally. Each one receives 33 and a third zuzim. Since each one is owed at least 100 Jews, they each have an equal claim to the property. So now, what happens if the estate was worth 200 Jews? If 200 Jews was there, and the wife or 200 Jews said to the wife that owed 100 Jews, I will not contest you over the first 100 Jews, and your share in the 100 Jews will not be reduced because of me. The halacha is al shalmana no telas kamishim. The one with the kesuba of 100 Jews takes 50 Jews. And the one with the kesuba of 200 Jews and the one with the kesuba of 300 Jews each take 3 gold dinars, which is 75 Jews. We're a total of 200. 75, and 50. Now, next case. If there are 300 Jews there, and the wife who's owed 300 Jews said to the other 2 wives, I will not contest either of you over the first 100 Jews, then the halacha is, Shalmana notas chamishim. The one with the kesuba of 100 Jews takes 50. V'shal masayim mana. And the one with the kesuba of 200 Jews takes 100 Jews. V'shal shalosh meos shisha shal zahav. And the one with the kesuba of 300 Jews takes 6 gold dinars, which is 150 Jews. So they each get exactly half of what they were claiming to get. Similarly, 3 people put money in a fund in order to buy merchandise, but each one contributed a different amount. And the value of the money went down or up. This is the way they divide it. They divide the loss or gain according to the amount of money each one put in, instead of everyone taking an equal share. Mishnah Hey. Okay. Misha Hayanasa Arba Nashim. So is married to 4 wives. I feel like we're doing this song by the Seder. Who knows 1? Who knows 2? Who knows 3? Who knows 4? So now we did the 1 wife, 2 wives, 3 wives. Now someone was married to 4 wives and he died. Harishona Kodemis Lishnia, the first wife comes before the second wife and collects her entire kesuba because her husband's property was pledged to her first. Lishnia Lishlishis, and the second wife comes before the third wife. Lishlishis Revius, and the third wife comes before the fourth wife. Harishona Nishbas Lishnia. However, before the first wife can take anything, she must swear to the second wife that she was not already paid, since there might be nothing left for the second wife after the first one collects. The second wife can make the first one swear that her claim is valid. Ushniya l'shlishis, and before the second wife can take anything, she must swear to the third wife for the same reason. Ushlishis revius, and before the third wife can take anything, she must swear to the fourth wife. Revius nifrash shalom yeshua. However, the fourth wife is paid without making the shua because nobody is affected, and she collects her kesuba. Benana somewhere, Benana says, should the fourth wife gain by not having to swear just because she is last, her claim would affect the other wives in the following case. If it was discovered that the property taken by one of the first three wives had been stolen by the husband, that wife would have to give the property back to its original owner. She would then come to claim the kesuba again. But after the fourth wife has collected her kesuba, there might not be enough property left for her. Af hi lo sifra ela b'shvua. Therefore, in this case, even the fourth wife is not paid unless she makes an oath. If the ksubas are produced in court and all of them were written on the same day but at different hours of that day, whoever comes before the other, even by only 1 hour, has the right to collect her kesuba first. The shows, and in fact, in Yerushalayim, they write in their documents the hours in which they were written. But the ksubas are produced in court, and all of them are written even in the same hour. And there was only 100 zuz in the husband's estate, which is not enough to pay all of them. They divide the property equally. And the last Mishnah for today, if someone was married to two wives and sold this field, which is worth only enough to pay one of their kesubas, the kasva rishona l'lokech, and the first wife, the one he married first, wrote to the buyer of the field, din udvarim ein li imach, I will have no legal claim or argument with you about this field. I will not take it from you as payment for my kesuba. And then the husband died. The law is the second wife can take the field from the buyer, and then the first wife can take it away from the second wife since her right to the field came first. And then the buyer can take it from the first wife since she gave her rights with respect to him. And they keep going around in a circle until the second wife takes it from the buyer, the first wife takes it from the second wife, the buyer takes it from the first wife, and so on, until they make a compromise among themselves. And so too is the law with the lender, meaning if someone owed a lender 100 zuz and he had two fields with each worth 50 zuz, he sold one field to one person, later sold to the other field to another person, and the lender wrote to the second buyer that he would not take that field from him. The lender concedes the first buyer's field as payment for a debt, and the first buyer can take the second buyer's field as compensation for his loss, and the lender can then take that field from the first buyer as payment for the rest of the money that he is owed. The second buyer can then take it back from the lender, since the lender said he would not take his field. It goes around in circles until they reach a compromise. In the last situation, and so too, the law with the woman who is a lender in the sense that her husband owes her kesuba to her. For example, her kesubas were 200 zuz, and her husband has two fields, each worth 100 zuz. He sold one field to one person, and later sold the other field to another person. And the woman wrote to the second buyer that she would not take his field as payment for kesuba. When the husband dies, the woman concedes the first buyer's field as her payment, Then the first buyer can take the second buyer's field, and the woman can take that field from the first buyer as payment for the rest of the kesuba, and the second buyer can take that field back from the women. It goes around in circles until they reach a compromise. That's all for today. Have a wonderful day and have a good Chodesh. Kol Tov. Thank you for joining us.